Hola community! Welcome to BlenderToday episode 216. We have a special day today. We are not going to see so much in terms of features, although the ones that are there are amazing, especially in terms of performance for everybody, from modeling to cycle stuff, even in some platforms. So let's get into it. The big news this week, the biggest news, are maybe not so much related to like the end user, although reporting bugs is going to change, it's going to be different. So that is one thing that is going to change. But the biggest thing is the website basically that you use, that or developers use, or people that want to become developers use, is going to change. You can have a sneak peek already and at projects.blender.org, which is a new URL where the projects are going to live, where the developer.blender.org will live. And it's not really that new, actually. If you've been around Blender, the Blender community enough time, and you might know that actually I made my account in projects.blender.org when it used to be for Blender projects. And at some point it was renamed to developer, but now developer is going to be another page, which we are already working on, which is going to be more like a landing page for new developers, and a way to access like the modules, to see how to access the chat, or how to get like my first issue, or how to compile Blender. So a one page that we want to use to send people to to basically see what is new in Blender, as in for developers development. From projects.blender.org right now you can't do much. It's in read-only mode, so you can log in, but you can't log in, sorry, but you can't do much. You can't comment, you can't anything, it's read-only. But from here you have more or less an idea of like, okay, this is Blender, the main repository, and then browsing it should feel pretty similar to or familiar to GitHub. Basically Git is a fork of Gogs, which it's very similar to, very well inspired in GitHub. So hopefully that is gonna make more new developers feel more at home. Well, it's like GitHub like 5 years, 10 years ago. so yeah, if you've been around for a while, you might know. Okay, let's continue. That is all. Oh, but one thing though is that if something that you need to do if you want to preserve your nickname, or if you want to save your nickname here in projects.blender.org, is that you need to go to your Blender ID to set that to set your nickname. You go to id.blender.org, so id.blender.org, you log in here, and you'll be you go to edit profile, and you will find the nickname field there. Other than that, I think it's I think we're in good time to move, and let's start with the thing that is going to have the biggest impact on the entire community, because in well, let's say, what is it, modeling / viewport / edit mode, bmesh. You have a mesh in edit mode, like a mesh with some modifiers in edit mode, which is like 90% probably of the use cases. Who doesn't go into edit mode with the modifiers? Well, in this fix by improvement, rewrite, refactor by Hans, it parallelizes the evaluated mesh conversion. So just those few words can make Blender so much faster. So let's see how much faster it is. So the conversion, basically, when you go into edit mode and you have some modifiers, it was single threaded apparently, or it is, and some parts having made having parallelized. The timing improvements that you get, like the speed improvements, are huge. How fast? Well, this test running on a Ryzen 7950X with a 1 million face grid seems to have gone from like a simple mesh with no attributes, just a mesh, went from 101 milliseconds to 59 milliseconds. So way faster, almost nearly have a 40% faster. And that is on a simple mesh, but actually the more complex your mesh is, like the more attributes that it has, the more like vertex groups and color attributes, the more that it will take advantage of this. So in an example with many several color attributes and vertex groups, the improvement is much bigger. It goes from 149 milliseconds to calculate this to 65.6 milliseconds. So much faster. The next change, it's also related to improvements in performance, and I think it's also by hands. Yeah. So curves, use shared cache for evaluated data. How much faster is this? Well, when you're editing your curves, if there is some cache that they can share between each of them, between the curves, this is going to take advantage of that and be, okay, how much faster it is. In a test with 4 million points and 170,000 curves, not bad. Using curve normals in a procedural setup that didn't change positions procedurally gave around 5 times faster playback speeds than before this patch. And avoiding recalculating the offsets on every update saved about 3 milliseconds for every sculpt update for brushes that don't change topology. So like if you're combing the hair, that should be now faster because it's in brushes that don't change topology, like don't cut your topology or don't add new geometry. Amazing. Faster than fast. Okay, we have more performance improvements, but first let's move into what's new in the UI, in the user interface. There is one developer at the studio, Bison. She's working on improvements in the gizmos in the 3D viewport, and this week already has around, like she just started working on it last week, and now there is already a few improvements, even though she's just getting become familiar with the code. The first was to add a cage 2D draw style for circular shapes. So shapes that are like circular, like for example the cone, the end of a cone, for example, for a spotlight, or the area lights that have like a circular shape, that kind of shapes. The task actually, it's made by, well, it has some mockups by Andy Goralczyk from the studio, and has some proposals. So based on these proposals are the changes that are coming from Bison. This one adds a new draw style, which also has, I think in this commit didn't have, but it also has like a one dot in the center, so you can see what is center of that shape, of that cage. And with that in mind, there has been already fixes. So one fix is that the spotlight apparently was the circle inside of the spotlight, the blend shape wasn't, or radius, wasn't very accurate. Basically, it was like offset quite a lot. Let's see if I can open it in a bigger, whoop, all right, here. So now it's working properly from here till the end. And before it would be offset. So now the fall off from the area, it's properly working how it's meant to be. And also this is adding a gizmo for adjusting the blend value of the spotlights, but that was also wrong. Like the indicator was also wrong. This is how it used to be, like way offset, especially when the cone was wide open, and now it actually fits the area. So we have a new gizmo to control this size, and now actually fits in the area that it's supposed to fit. So welcome additions. Speaking of that, there is a change in cycles that I want to mention, but not yet. Let's first talk about EEVEE and Apple. So get ready. If you have an Apple device, like a Mac OS, like a MacBook Pro with a and you're using EEVEE that is much faster than the 2 weeks ago because there were improvements. Well, now guess what? It's even faster at what? At compiling shaders, but like so much faster. So the translation stage, basically going from GLSL to this metal shading language, it used to take, for example, in some cases, 120 milliseconds, which doesn't sound that much, 120 milliseconds. But when you have to compile a lot of shaders and you have a huge scene, then that adds up. Well, they made it faster. How much faster? From 120 to 5 milliseconds for complex EEVEE materials. So this not only affects the first time that you render, like they show it on the screen, but also the cold start that is called. Also that when you recompile the shaders again, like when you have to load it the second time, it's also gonna be faster. So faster cache hits for secondary compilations. So cool that the Apple devices are getting some attention, because they really lagged behind for a long while. And I have, the other day I ran into a YouTube channel that was Max, how was it? Max Tech. It's not a small channel, it has like 1 million subscribers, 1 million subscribers. However, it showed up on my feed, and I was pleasantly surprised that about the kind of reviews that it does for the laptop. So basically it starts with 2 laptops and without being plugged into the battery, and then does a bunch of tests. And in one of those tests, it goes in and it just opens Blender. It opens the scene from like the BMW, but also opens the one from EEVEE, the one that has that it's really heavy in both EEVEE, but also renders with cycles. So it opens in the MacBook Pro and in a 3060 Ti, like a GT RTX NVIDIA graphics card, much larger. But it's pretty interesting to see it. Also, especially when it compares, like I think here is the M1 Pro and the MacBook. Is the M1 Pro and the older one, basically, and it also compares both, and the new one is so much faster that I'm tempted to send them an email and ask them to, like, hey, you should try it with the new 3.5 alpha, because it is really getting so much faster. But I think I'm gonna wait until 3.5 is in beta, because I think that's gonna see a huge difference. Of course, comparing with the RTX is still way behind, but it's not as behind as I would imagine. Also, when the 3080 Ti is unplugged, it seems to be much slower than the M2 Max unplugged. So that is also very interesting. So shout out to this channel. It's not that it needs like 1 million subscribers, but still. Okay, moving into cycles. This is what I wanted to show before. On cycles, there is a fix / improvement that is actually going to change your renders, maybe. If you use spotlights and you, for some reason, scale those spotlights and you were happy with your render, well, it wasn't really doing anything in cycles. Cycles didn't support the size for lamps that is not proportional, basically. So non-proportional, non-uniform scaling. That was the word. The rendering EEVEE, it would show just fine. It would support it, but not in cycles. So that has been fixed. So again, check your renders. If you have these kind of setups, they might look different. So if you're in the middle of rendering a film and you are halfway in there, just keep rendering with that Blender. Do not update yet, because some changes might happen. But yeah, support for the non-uniform scaling and lamps is very much welcome. Okay, going back to Apple devices, there is a commit that it caught my eye. It's not really making a lot of noise. It's just like enable Meta RT, like ray tracing, opt-in for AMD Navy 2 GPUs. Just that. And there is a task. If I would have seen it without knowing the context, knowing that it's super early and prototype and there's no details because there's probably not much to see, I would still get pretty excited to see the words metal ray tracing being mentioned. So it's a welcome change and also like a little spoiler of what could come in the future. Another thing that has been, well, it's a fix actually about using AMD and Intel devices together. So it was possible to choose both AMD and Intel metal devices on macOS, but that would lead to crashes or poor performance, or just didn't make much sense to have both Intel and AMD. So that has been fixed. So if you notice any changes as well on your setup, that probably is. Next, more improvements in speed for cycles, not as much as the other, but is around 2 or 3% of overall render speed up on metal on cycles. However, it's another commit that caught my eye. It's not a user-facing change, but it is mentioning something that is coming soonish. It's the principal BSDF v2. You may have seen the presentation at the Blender conference. Principled BSDF DF version 2. This one. You should check it out. I think I mentioned it already the other time. You should check it out. It goes really into detail, the technical and the non-technical, and then at the end there are some pretty pictures, but to see the difference between the principal BSDF 1 and 2. But it's amazing. You should go watch it. Well, changes are starting to appear on cycles that are not really user-facing changes yet, or not as big, but this is in preparation for the new principal BSDF. Super nice. No, that's it. Yeah, that is it. So let's switch into animation news. Animation, well, this is not animation. It's tagged as animation, but it's more like rigging. When you are in weight paint mode, you can now select linked vertices. I've never noticed, but actually the L and the Control L keys were, like to select linked, were not available in weight paint mode. Now they are, thanks to Christoph. So thank you, Chris. And it's the same shortcut as in other areas, but now it works in weight paint mode. The other change that was done, it's to expose the adding F-curve modifiers operator. Basically, the operator has the option to add selected F-curves instead of only the active F-curve. It was only exposed in the redo panel. It wasn't exposed, like you have to first do it and then redo with that setting. Now these changes are exposed in the menus. In which menus we can... it's the one that has the channels, expand, channel collapse, extrapolation type, and so on and so forth. In the dope sheet and in the graph editor. So they only needed to be exposed. Speaking of the dope sheet, and speaking of things that were supported but were just not exposed, or like the functionality was there but not yet represented in any way, is the pin icon in the dope sheet. The commit goes as follows, again by Chris. Animation, enable pin icon in the dope sheet. Even though the dope sheet respects the pin channels, it did not show the icon to interact with the pin state. This adds the icon to the dope sheet as well. Welcome icon. So it supported it just wasn't there. So the commit is also like tiny. the changes. Just needed to add to compare the editor with both the action and the graph in 3 places. Little code, only if you know where it goes. Okay, the next change has to do with I/O in general. The USD export now has 2 new options, scale and bias for normal maps. The change, authored by Michael B. Johnson, Dr. Wave, apparently is addressing an issue that the USD exporter did not conform to USD preview surface specs for the normal maps. Now there is a setting that you can tweak that will let you change the scale and the bias inputs to ensure that the normals are in tangent space, following the convention as set in the USD specs. Follow the specs as explained in this website by Pixar. The other change also related to USD is a fix. So fix this bug where USD camera properties were not being converted. Now they are. Convert USD camera properties to millimeters from USD units. So in USD they use specific kind of units that were not being transformed or like converted into Blender units. Okay. The next change has to do with FVX. It's a speed up shape key weights and normals when exporting FVX, changed by Mystery M. The speed up is about 5 to 10%, observed by comparing cases where the vertex group index is not in the vertex weights, so all weights on the vertex have to be iterated. So lots of work, 5 to 10% faster. And a small change only in the UI, but the layout for selecting the axes in the OBJ and Collada exporters are now following. Basically, it used to have all the buttons like X, Y, Z, minus X, minus Y, minus Z. So like 6 buttons in a row, which is not great because once you have a size, a certain size, you cannot see really all the options. And having all the options available when you can only pick one at a time also doesn't make much sense. So now it is actually just a drop down. If I see that change, yeah, it used to be like this, which looks cool when the scene when there's space for it, but now it's a drop down, which looks a bit silly with just all the space. But if you can't select multiple, then this doesn't make much sense. Next change has to do with, well, let's see. It's a fix in Grease Pencil. It's a fix mainly. It's not a new feature, but the merge down layer operator was duplicating the wrong frame. Basically, if you were not using this feature because of that has been fixed. In geometry nodes, we have a few changes. One, the object input in the modifiers now shows an eyedropper icon that you can click on, or maybe press E as well. I don't know if that feature it's propagated to everywhere, but usually it is. With the E key or just by pressing or clicking on the eyedropper, you can select an object from the viewport and it would be and from the outliner or only from the viewport. It would be cool if it would support the outliner. I think it supports the outliner. So much simpler. You can only have one object at a time. You don't even have to do like C fighting stuff. Yeah, so new option. You're gonna see this new icon in the modifiers with geometry nodes. The next change is performance improvements, again by the geometry nodes team. Parallelize parts of the duplicate element node, not the entire node. And there's still something that could be improved, but this has been made to work in parallel. So much faster when you have multiple cores and multiple nodes. The next change is just a UI change. It's mainly like a PSA that if you can't find the sample nodes, worry not, they have been moved to be more consistent with the rest of the layout, the new layout that was presented a few weeks back. So basically, there was an inconsistency between geometry sample nodes and the mesh curve sample nodes, where the latter didn't have a special sample category, and we categorize as operations, which they're not really operations. Also, put the sample category between read and write, since the verb name is more consistent and sampling is an advanced form of reading. Yeah. Reading, sampling is like a reading plus. yeah, makes sense. The next change, and the last one, it's a user improvement, like quality of life. If you are the kind of person that changes your keymap a lot, you will be glad to know that the node link drag operator, when you drag a node, a link like a noodle, that now has its own modal keymap that you can tweak in the keymap editor in Blender. The next change, well, actually, let's just call it potpourri because it's a bit of everything. There is in sculpt mode 2 changes, but they are related to what we talked about last week regarding making everything more consistent regarding the keymap for the masks, for the inverted masks. They remember since maybe 2 weeks ago, actually, yeah, that the keymap was changed, so it's consistent all across the board. Some operators had it inverted, some didn't, so now it's not inverted anymore. So uninverted, straight up. In this case, it's for the geodesic mask expand keymap. Again, this is also just a keymap change, so you can change it back if you want. Just a one-liner. Another change that is related to this more than just a keymap. It's the normal fall-off change. Now this has been uninverted again. So yay for consistency. Fixes. There is one fix that it was probably very annoying. Custom data layers become unsorted in versioning. So versioning is when you open a blend file from like older versions into a new one, into a new Blender, or the other way around. You open a file saved with a new Blender version in older Blenders. There is some Blender that's some magic over there, but custom data layers where we're losing the sorting that you spent so much time sorting. That has been fixed by Bardap, Martijn Versteeg. You Dutch or Belgium? Next, last week I mentioned there is a new Python API module or not submodule. Basically, API to make your own generic UI lists. That list that is like the material list or shape keys or vertex groups. That widget now has a new API. However, that has been changed. So if you made a new add-on last week, well, on Friday it was changed. So basically it wasn't following the conventions in the newer conventions in the API. So it was IDX instead of index. Now it is index. So if you made a script, it's gonna stop working. But it's easy to fix. You can just look at the code. All the links again are in the description below. The other change, only visual. Never noticed that sometimes the text in some panels, the text will like kiss the border, like there would be not enough room. That would happen if you had like panels without the header, and that has been fixed. Tiny one, but makes it nicer. Again, by Leon. The next, okay, last 2 changes. One, Just a heads up, the default encoder for AV1 in video sequence editor when exporting FFmpeg, not sequencer, but in general, and has been changed to slowest. It's like, why, Pablo? Why would you ever choose slower? Well, slower is not always bad. It means that maybe it's gonna take more time to make a file smaller or pick a better, a slower codec, but at the end up with a better quality. So that has been changed. Basically, now it will actually choose the leave AOM AV1 first, and then leave Libre AV1E second if it didn't find as a fallback, if it didn't find the first library. And last but not least, Viewport compositor. It's all the rage. I've been using the regular compositor, well, trying to use a regular compositor, and I just can't stand it anymore because it's so slow. So how quickly we get spoiled. Anyway, Viewport compositor, it's available for more people since last week. The Apple developers made it work with the new with their new systems, but older systems, both in Windows, Linux, and Apple, might not support it. So like OpenGL systems on Apple or older Windows and Linux systems may not support it. So Blender will now tell you basically the comment was hard-coded to macOS, but actually there are versions of Linux and Windows in which it doesn't work if the system doesn't support it. So now it will actually use the GPU module capabilities and actually tell you if it, like for real, if it can support it or not. Before it was like, hey, you are Darwin. Well, you're macOS, so not supported. Now it will actually support it. It will show you if it can't work. And that is all. I have covered everything that is new this week. So how about we go to blender.community, click on the new dev platform thread made by Kai, thank you Kai, and see what's new. Let me have a drink. Haven't drunk in the whole live stream. Okay. Let's it's 8 questions. Let's do all of them. Let's start from the top. Hi Pablo, did you talk with Ton about 3 releases per year? Any new developers since September? Well, regarding 3 releases a year, I brought it up. I brought it up with some developers. Some were more keen than others. I think it would work, it would still work. It needs some more thinking. However, with all this Gitia moving from Fabricator to Gitia, things got slow. However, with that being said, this year will be ideal to make that change if it happens, right? Because we are going to have 3.5 like now in February, March 3.5. Then we have 3.6 around June, like yeah, June, July, August. When is it? March 3, 4, yeah, June, July. So for like NSC, and then we have for like SIGGRAPH, and then we have another release for the Blender conference, which is Blender 3.7, which is an LTS, and it's all perfect because you're not going to just spend 3 months in Blender 4.0, right? You want to take a bit more time. So that would mean 3 releases this year, and then take as long as needed for Blender 4.0 and make it nice next year. And then somehow fix the schedule so from then on it's 3 releases per year. That hasn't been decided yet, but the fact that we're gonna have 3 releases this year, that didn't need to be decided. It's just gonna happen because I don't think developers will like to release 4.0 so quickly with just 3 months between 3.7 and 4.0. Maybe they want to take some more time. I know there is a bunch of patches already for refactors in bmesh, in mesh stuff, some nodes that are gonna be deprecated, some old nodes. I don't know, it's a time to deprecate a bunch of stuff. I don't know, maybe the old compositor can go away, maybe some texture old stuff can go away, be replaced with new ones. So it's I think it would be a good idea to take the time to make the 4.0 release big, like 3.0 was, but next year. Next question by Soroyodan. Hello Pablo, 3 questions. 1. Are there any plans to add vector polygons similar to Octane's Vectron rendering to cycles? This would allow users to procedurally generate highly detailed geometry without using much RAM. I'm not familiar with this and I haven't seen any patches about it, so I don't know if someone from the community can chime in, but I don't. I'm not sure with the Octane's Vectron. It's cool how they add not Octane's vector polygon rendering. Is like they add a title, you know, like a Apple Retina. It's not high DPI, Retina. Since Vulkan has support for direct storage, will there be any improvements relating to streaming data into Blender once the Vulkan backend is implemented? I think that not only has to do with Vulkan, but also with the Blender like file structure as well, right? Maybe by using something like USD that has a streaming, that would be pretty neat. I don't know of any specific plans though, but I think once Vulkan has been tested for reals, that's another big reason to wait for 4.0. Maybe that will be tackled for sure. I think nobody likes to wait to open files. Number 3, currently working with attributes instead of geometry nodes feels kind of messy. Has there been any plans to add dedicated workspace for working with attributes? No. Propose one, please. What do you have in mind? That sounds interesting. But I don't think our entire workspace would, like a whole new workspace? Is it really that hard? Like, what do you, isn't it just like overlays or not? Next question, but yeah, please come up with a design. Come to share it in Blender chat or here in right click select, or on DevTalk on the forums. The next question says, "Hi Pablo, I got 2 questions regarding rendering geometry node curves. 1. Curve to mesh is great, but there should be an easier way to render curves directly. When applied to a hair object, geometry nodes curves can be rendered as rounded ribbons or 3D curves in cycles. But why do they render curves always have auto smooth handles, even when the splines in geometry nodes have other handle interpolations? And second, when can we finally render curves as grease pencil objects? That should be even better." The grease pencil team is working on refactoring the entire system, and it will be this year, I think. I hope. There were discussions about making like a workshop, like a small, tiny grease pencil code quest here in Amsterdam. So that will happen this year. Like, I think everybody wants it to happen at the Blender conference, was agreed upon, and some of the developers that have been here before for a small periods of time for working on this kind of stuff, they well, one of them is here, and another one, I think it's planned, I don't know if he knows, to come again this year. We have Hans in the chat saying the whole curve rendering system just isn't finished when rendering. But also, I guess, I mean, geometry nodes and like cycles interprets curves in a different way than, like, cycles is a render engine, right? So I don't know how much is it from Blender's side that has to communicate, tell cycles, render curves like this. I don't know how much work it is from either geometry nodes or from cycles itself. But it's, as Hans says, it's not finished yet. Sistine says, "Hello Pablo, hope you had a wonderful day." I did have a wonderful day, thank you. Are there any plans to bring all the new sockets, texture, boolean, object, string, and the custom socket tooltips from geometry nodes over to shader nodes? I really hope so. I was, what is this? More input sockets for node groups in shader editor. Well, I mean, but what can you do with that, right? Like a string input. I mean, yes, but what for? Like for a texture, it should be in combination with other stuff, right? What I'm mostly looking forward to is like when the Blender compositor will make use of all the new features, like the dragon, like it's so abandoned, this old compositor. I hope when the new one takes place, because for example, you drag and drop the render layer image, and then by default it shows you like normalized value. Like this is on a node per node basis, but I've noticed this all over the place. Like there is just no any weight put into the nodes, what to show, which entries not to show. It feels like very like a bit dated, which is dated. But I hope with the new compositor, I don't know how much, like if doing the work now would get on the way, or just better to wait to the new compositor and do it in the new node. I don't know if the old nodes talk to the new system, or it's just are there completely new nodes. But yeah, the shading nodes editor for sure, but the compositor, which is the OG, the compositor is the first node editor ever to exist in Blender. So respect for the elderly. But yeah, no. I think they're gonna the new sockets are gonna show up when there is like a use case for it, for each one. Nam says, "Hi Pablo, how are you? I'm great. What would you consider the best way to implement a simulator going forward?" Kind of a big question, but yeah, okay. I understand geometry nodes is the main implementation going forward, but is there any lost performance in doing so, or overhead in nodes we might see later? I mean, by judging by how Houdini is doing, I think the performance and overhead of nodes can be tackled in one way or another, either pre-compiling stuff. But okay, let's continue. I think it will still be worth it if nodes are easy to implement. A little ramble, but we are looking at putting the simulator inside the node, or simply referencing a library from the node, or both. I think there will be like the simulation side of things. It's just like a solver that you can represent in as a node or as a modifier or you name it. But the first implementation of the simulator is just not even gonna cover physics, as far as I know. I think it's gonna be the simplest first, and then work on top of that and add more and more complexity. Like geometry nodes, when it first appeared, it was very simple, and then over time got more and more complex. Next says, also, I think the reliable release schedule is really transformative for Blender. The RT devs from other companies can more than give estimates, but have dates and releases to target. Any open source programs that can manage a release schedule seems it is far above the competition in adoption. Hey, cool, thank you. I mean, I don't know if that was a compliment to Blender developers or Blender management in general. But yeah, I think having release schedules, like people know that there is a release like for at the beginning of the year and the middle of the year for SIGGRAPH, and then Blender conference or end of the year. It helps, especially when you know this year there will be an LTS, like a long-term support for studios to use. Next question by FreeMind. Hey Pablo, I have a simple issue about active tool settings. A lot of settings in the list have absolutely nothing to do with the active tool, and it makes no sense for them to be there. For example, workspaces is one of them. Workspaces, but that is not in the tool itself, right? Workspaces is, yeah, it's in the tool. Yeah, this doesn't make any sense. Like, it would even make more sense in view, but not in tool. This, I agree with you. This should go away. Also, this list, misaligned list. Leon, where are you? How do you feel like working on this? This should be a UI list, right? I don't even know what it is now. Is it like some sort of box with a list? But the jumping situation here is quite funny. Anyway, which options that are not related to the active tool? I mean, if they're under active tool and you have an active tool here, they show the settings there. Which ones in particular? Like the origins, like they're in edit mode. Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I guess they are. It's a mix here because we have the annotate that you can annotate, but also transform the origin, which is two different tools, not really one tool. But yeah, I see what you mean. Can these settings be organized better sometime? So the menu would only display settings related to the current active tool instead of various random settings from all around Blender. It's just a mess currently. I've made a detailed explanation of what the problem is, given a lot of thought, and made a detailed suggestion on how things could be organized to make the most sense. Hey, that's super nice. Thank you. As someone who is from the Blender UX team, I would appreciate if you read it sometime. Well, unfortunately, this post has been closed and hidden by a moderator as a feature request. I find it weird as I consider reorganization of settings not asking for new features. It's not asking for new features. It's like user feedback, right? This is other development topics, usability. I think there is a user feedback. Isn't? Side feedback, user interface. Wasn't there like a user feedback section? Maybe I missed it, but I'm gonna keep it here to give it a look. Like this. Options in edit mode. Well, this whole section, the tools, also to me they should go away. It doesn't belong in the properties editor. The next question by Ali Blend Art says, "Hi Pablo, I hope you're well. I wanted to ask a question. Given that in 2023 the focus will be on simulations for physics and beyond, will there be changes and improvements in Manta Flow in Blender version 3.5? No. Blender 3.5 it's almost complete, like feature complete in terms of what it's going to get. The beta has been postponed because of the transition from Fabricator to GDF, from developer.blender.org to projects.blender.org. But other than that, I think it is complete. You can go to the wiki under release notes. 3.5, you can see what is what's new, but nothing in Manta Flow as far as I know. And for 3.6 and beyond, I don't know anybody working on that. However, the team is dedicated to work on the simulation side of things. It's not really attached to Manta Flow because again, like what I mentioned, for simulations, you can have like a non-physics related challenges already without even involving any physics system. That things are gonna be the priority. Then Manta Flow, I don't know if someone is gonna pick it up or just implement something else completely different. I don't really know anybody from the, like, at least working on patches, or like from the Blender team working on that. So far, The team on geometry nodes is working on that. The team, they're also working on making like the mesh handling faster and more organized. So unfortunately, I don't know if anybody working actively on MantaFlow. We need more developers. We need, no, for some reason, physics developers are hard to find. It's like physics are hard or something. I don't know. Yeah, it's not fun. But there are add-on developers that are working on other on physics, on add-ons that use other physics systems. Maybe they would like to, I don't know, contribute to Blender somehow. That would be pretty nice. If that could happen one day. But you know, it's hard. I think I covered everything that I needed to cover. We are approaching 1 hour, yes. So I'm happy that I managed to cover some of the questions. It's already getting late here, but it's sunsetting still. Okay. I hope you had a good evening, afternoon, morning, whatever, whenever you're watching it. Next week, we should have more updates because the developers, as I mentioned, they're really focused now on getting the system, the platform, from developer.blender.org to projects.blender.org. That would also mean that every patch of code has to be resubmitted to the new system, because the new system doesn't use the old patch system that like D123, and then you have to either use arc something to make it work locally and then compile it and all that. The new system actually has pull requests, which people familiar with GitHub are going to be familiar with it. The great thing is that for some patches, if they have been approved and the buildbot, like the buildbot system at the studio has checked that it compiles and everything is ready to go, developers can merge those changes into the main branch, which, by the way, another change, Blender main branch, it's not gonna be called master anymore. Long are the days of master. Now it will be main. So following the convention that has been established many years ago already. Even on GitHub, you can choose, by default it's main, but you can choose master. But yeah, now it's gonna be called main, because if you compile Blender at home, you have to change the URLs to the new URL anyway. So might as well change the branch name from master to main. That's kind of a small change, but I think it's looking forward. It's nice to do this as soon as possible, and then people are not even gonna remember. Did you even remember that it used to be trunk? Master used to be called trunk, like a trunk of a tree, and then the branches, and yeah, then that was when SVN was a thing, and before the SVN there was CVS. Yeah, actually the mailing list is still called CVS, Blender CVS, I think, if I'm not wrong. I think lists.blender, okay, this is completely sidetracked. Yes, Blender CVS. Okay, Blender CVS, then it became SVN, then Git, and now we're still in Git, but now the branch name has changed. So yeah, it's part of change, like just part of life. So let's meet again next week, about, I would say, the same time, but definitely in the same place. See you next week. Bye bye. Watch out your ear holes. I wasn't that loud. Okay, have a great week. Thanks for watching. I will see you next week, same place and time. Bye bye.